Hey everybody, what's happening? It's been a while. If you've actually been here, then you probably know that's not uncommon with me. Um, One of the things I've learned, um, I've been checking out Andy Edwards. I don't know if you're familiar with a YouTuber named Andy Edwards. Brit, great cat, drummer, guitar player, makes some great points, and I love the fact that he's unscripted. In fact, he's like in some ways like it's a little bit of he's an inspiration to a degree, because I do believe in the unscripted, and I think that works. And I like when people are, and Andy certainly is, and he can be very devastatingly funny. Um, but the pitfall of that is that you could get yourself into all sorts of trouble, or you could say something, and people either misunderstand or don't like the particular direction you're going in. Now you're suddenly explaining yourself, right? It gets the very thing that gives it the extemporaneous quality, which is kind of nice, can come back and get you, I suppose. Um, so I like Andy, but Andy's starting to do well. But Andy's on every day; he does it every day, and I think it's kind of taken over his life. And people say, if you want to do well on YouTube, you got to be on all the time. That's true. And since I'm not, and I'm not because I've got other things going on in my life. There are more important things. I like to be practicing, and I'm writing tunes and all sorts of stuff. Also, and I think probably mentioned this in a previous video, but last August I had the first time I had a real serious health scare, really, and I can't remember how long, but it was maybe ever. I had a thing called a pulmonary embolism, which are blood clots after a long flight, and that can happen with some people. It's a long tail, but I spent some time recovering from this and being on a lot of medication, blood thinners, and so forth, to get rid of the blood clots so that they do not kill you. And only in the past week or so, I guess it's been about a week, I'm now officially healthy again and off the blood thinners and could start really, really being normal again, at least in the way I live. So that's, been a big thing. This month has been crazy because you can still hear my voice isn't 100% because I got a terrible bug, and it's been 5 degrees where I live. And my mom had a fall. My mom is, I'm older. Well, you could guess. My mom's really old. But she's great. She's doing very well, but she did have a fall, and she had a hairline fracture of her tibia. So I moved her in with me, and I've been taking care of mom for a while. She's getting better and getting ready to go back to her own place. So that worked out. So there's a lot. Also, right, we have a life. All sorts of things are going on. And in the course, we got holidays, and holidays were fine. All that, it was good. And now, I am, I guess, sort of coming up for air to a degree about just how bad our shared circumstances are. And spending more time, I think, just thinking deeper and harder about, I think I've got a handle on what's going on. And there's not a lot of good answers. And the conclusions you come to are pretty depressing. You hate to be sending a message of, a pox on all their houses, sort of thing. But I think we don't find ourselves in the situation we're in as a culture, as a society. It doesn't happen because of one person, or it doesn't happen because of a political movement per se. It's been going on and going in this direction for Oh, I can look back to most of my life, a good 40 years anyway. Even more, actually, looking back at it. I was still a kid and I could see rumblings of what I considered bad, dangerous stuff. And it's just, you kept thinking it was going to go in another direction, and it kind of never has. Yes, fits and starts. There have been moments where you thought, okay, we're getting a clue, but, this stuff is bad, right? And what am I talking about? Well, I guess the thing that brought me to decide to do this today was just I guess it's the outrage of the moment. I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment, right? Or I think it's to every day find the latest outrage and obsess about that is not terribly bright. And I think maybe what I'm really talking about is just how the median on just basic intelligence keeps going lower and lower. Someone reminded me of the movie Idiocracy and how it was a satire, and now maybe it's not. Excuse me, I think I'm gonna adjust my phone. Yeah, I do it on my phone. Yes, I do. Because I don't have the time. There are people who are here to be television stars, or whatever. We're right. Tube is in the title, so anyway, I remember hearing as I was growing up, my dad was an educator, so he got out of education because he kept watching it get worse and worse. This is the 70s and 80s, right? I mean, long time. The dumbing down of America, right? How news got turned into something that wasn't news. That's a conversation we're having in the 90s. Go watch Broadcast News, great movie. And you sit there and go, okay, this isn't, no, it's just gotten worse and worse, and more of a crisis. The fact that no one reads, the fact that people can't watch a movie because they don't have the attention span to watch a film. It's really bad. Nobody can necessarily trust news sources because they're so controlled and in many cases so ideologically bound that you're not getting a straight story. There's no common language that way. Well, everybody knows. No, not everybody knows. We don't agree on anything. Now, obviously, that's always been the case, right? Name a period in history when everyone agreed. It's never happened. Okay. That's a matter of degree. It's a matter of just how much. What we're dealing with now, we haven't been this bad off in not knowing what the hell's going on in probably a couple centuries. It's really amazing. We have more communication and all that. But, what's failing us? I guess that's one of the questions, right? What's failing us? Why, are we in this situation? And the unfortunate answer in all this is we're failing ourselves on an individual level. People don't seem to have convictions. I mean, integrity is a thing, but integrity is only a thing if you have values. Not values that change every 5 minutes. Actual values that require you to make hard decisions. That aren't just, well, done tomorrow, I'll have different values. Because no, that doesn't work that way. It's once you have core things, yes, we all evolve, we can change, but in the main, values are things you stick with for life. You and you got to those values not just because, well, I was raised this way. Hopefully, right? Values happen as a younger person because of study, because you've looked into you know something about history. You know the sorts of values people have had. You know what's worked and what hasn't worked. And so therefore you sit there and go, oh, I actually believe in ethics. And I'm right. What we've got now, and I think this is part of it, is this clash that we're having, is about a lot of folks. You know, if you think of the electorate where I am in the U.S., right? And I think you could break it kind of into thirds. You have a third that's very hard right. You have a third that's left, I guess. And you have a third that doesn't care. And that's usually how presidential elections go. Sometimes we've broken, the numbers move a little bit, but not that much. For a long time, many decades, a third of the country doesn't buy into any of it. Now, whenever I've mentioned that to people go, well, they don't count. If you don't vote, then you don't get to make an argument. And I'm like, I think you're missing the point. If a third of the electorate doesn't buy into any of it, is completely apathetic, doesn't know about any of it, and doesn't want to, then that 1/3 can be easily manipulated. Easily. They'll just buy into whichever way the wind's blowing at any one time. That's a real problem, right? To have that many people who are that apathetic. And we've survived with that apathy before. Yeah, but we didn't survive, and I'm not sure we can survive that kind of apathy when we're also incapable of thinking about anything for more than 5 or 8 seconds. That we have, through the tools, through the toys, through what I'm talking, we're communicating via, the effect of internet, the effect of social media has been we've lobotomized ourselves. And we're so anesthetized at this point that in the past few years, right, 5, maybe a little longer, where we start to realize that the devices were watching in on us. And, oh well, we didn't care. What seems apparent to me is that that's really it. We're dumber and we don't care about anything. This is just a few days after, White House Trump put up a meme of the Obamas as apes. It's unbelievable. And I would say a good third to 2/3 of the country. You'd say, okay, there's got to be something that will break through, and that'll finally, people will wake up and go, whoa, right? Do you see it? Because I don't see it. I see it activating parts of the electorate, but nothing universal. On the right, I don't think they care. I'm fine with it. And the truth is, they're thrilled that he's doing it because, God, they've always been fine with it, and will people just get over it? I mean, it's ICE shooting people. I don't care. Good. And what that movement, I think, is all about, it's basically a business argument. They don't want any rules. They want rules on everybody else, but they don't want rules on themselves. They want a rule-free zone. They don't believe in rules. And they can't stand any system that would have rules that would hold them in any way accountable. There can be no accountability for them. So angry about it. Why do they want to break all the legal stuff? Any institution they want to break, because institutions mean shared knowledge and rules. If we all follow the rules, we all play by the rules. I hate that kind of thinking and think it's incredibly naive that anyone would have. First of all, any kind of ideals is wrong, and that anyone would do anything other than try to screw the other guy as hard as possible. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's where we're at. And they're thrilled that they finally could just say what they've always been thinking anyhow. It's so don't think we've reached bottom now. There's no bottom. Things couldn't get much, much worse. No elections in the fall. They're good with that. Good, thank God. It's what we've always wanted anyhow. And I say they've always wanted anyhow. Well, I'm not a kid, so I've been around a bit. I'm reminded of, remember seeing all this come. People say, maybe it was the Tea Party. Was that the beginning of it? No. Tea Party was basically MAGA already. They just didn't coalesce around whatever particular person. But not believing in the rules, despising a rule-based system, reminds me of, I'm reminded of Barry Goldwater. I'm not saying Goldwater believed this. He didn't. Goldwater, about as dyed-in-the-wool conservative as you can possibly imagine, saying in the 70s, right? He was a senator from Arizona, saying the last thing the Republican Party needed to do was bring in the religious right. He said, I believe the quote is, "Don't bring in the preachers. I've tried to talk to these people and you can't." Goldwater basically saying, well, we believe in democracy, and we've got, in a democracy you have to do these things. And the religious right going, well, then get rid of it. Angry. All we want is our law, because we're being spoken to directly from God. God talks to us when we then tell you what to do. Right? Divine command theory or whatever it is. Look, I'm a secular humanist. So, I do see religion as the problem. The age of reason, the Enlightenment, all about getting religion away from power. I think it was Hitchens who said, we spent hundreds of years trying to achieve that. But if for a second they could go back and take power right back, they would gladly do it. And that's been going on since Reagan sort of let all that in. And you started getting the Lee Atwaters of the world and, super religious right going on. And yeah, I have a problem with them. They are clearly opponents of democracy and always have been. So I'm their opponent too. So I see the religious component as being a big part of what's all this going on. But Trump is just there's no religion there. True. But Trump is useful for the religious right. And they've sort of morphed into their own thing. They don't, what they consider Christianity is very different from anything Jesus was talking about, right? They've turned it into it's a cultural clearly very racial in many respects. But that's what's going on, right? It's that. So anytime, look, people say God and country, and I go, okay, now I know I'm in trouble because I don't believe in those things. You're not going to win me with a religious argument. You're certainly not going to win me with nationalism. That kind of nationalism, tribalism is something that needs to be muted everywhere. I don't like British nationalism. I don't like Chinese nationalism. I don't like Russian nationalism. I don't like anybody's nationalism. That kind of my tribe is the best. Why? Because I'm in it. I mean, there is no group of humans that doesn't have blood on its hands about something. That's not to say that they're all terrible, because they have all sorts of wonderful things that have happened. Right, okay. But that's humanity. But thinking there's a best people. And I'm it's people throw around the other one that you hear bandied around. If you're not quite a Democrat, then you're clearly a communist, right? I don't know that there's a lot of communists out there. No one's saying workers of the world unite. But if you really want to freak out right-wing people, like I believe in rules. And I also believe that, we have a monetary system, right? And I don't have a problem with that. But it is a contrivance, right? It's a thing that we have created, right? Pieces of paper with dead presidents and former potentates, so that we have a method of exchange, so we don't have to kill the person next to us just to get something to eat. I think that's the line from the movie with Jeremy Irons, right? Margin Call, right? Great scene. But it's a contrivance, which is basically the same as, ownership, physical ownership of things and trees and, whatever. In order to make it all work, and I have no problem with people making money and all that, right? So we, by a convention, have agreed that we will work under this set of rules so that there is but to think that that's anything other than just a contrivance, right? Now, and it's fine. But to think that it's anything more than that, you want to freak them out? Go at the very foundations of ownership. Now you say, well, that's a communist idea. Well, yeah, that's true. I don't agree with where they took it, because that didn't work very well. I'm not sure they tried it particularly well. I think it was always an authoritarian thing. But I'm not saying they had good points, because no, I don't think any of it works. But the idea that, ownership is kind of a thing that yes, as a society, we've created that so that we can make this all work out. Fine. That's why you have a legal system. It's not truth. If you want truth, take philosophy class, right? Not truth, it's a system by which, if we follow a set of rules, maybe, sometimes, we might get to something called justice. But we're not necessarily going to achieve truth. And those are things, that we kind of need to talk about. But in this society, is that even possible? Now, I've thrown a lot of... I've said the right is a mess, because the right is a mess. I don't believe, and I know people like this, anything that will not allow them to make every scrap of money, everything for them, in a ruleless, right, in a situation that it's a free-for-all, they're living under an autocracy, that's fine. They're good with that. They really are good with that. They can push just as hard as they want. That's what they think the Bell ideal is. Okay, so they're the bad news guys. But there's plenty of blame to go around. And again, I think the blame fundamentally is with individual people not being educated, not having any sort of standards, not enforcing those standards, looking the other way about everything. never getting involved. That's a problem. If you allow it, then it's going to happen. And we have been allowing it for 40 years or more. Now, my friends on the left, good Lord, the Democrats are totally out of power. And you know what? They really deserve to be out of power. They've lost to the worst president of all time twice. That means you're doing something fundamentally wrong. For them, I think it becomes a problem of their inability to just be like an HR department, to have no ability to speak this euphemistic language constantly that never seems honest, seems direct. To seem like when there's an outrage, well, we put out a very strongly worded statement. Their response to some outrage is to, see if they can sign out the conference room. And it's a corporate Democrat marriage that's been happening for basically since the Clintons, and it hasn't worked out well. Because when they needed that world to have their back, I think they thought all the internet people were with them. Are the tech guys? Bezos is tearing apart the Washington Post. Zuck, the whole litany. Go through them. Are any of those guys are taking a stand on anything? Looking for the next buck, and they've said it. All they care about is, all they really care about is if it kept the shareholders happy. I don't care what, and if that means screwing over an enormous amount of people, great. If it doesn't, okay, great. It doesn't matter. No compunction. So there's no values, right? None. So that's what we're in. It's bad. People say, well, it can't get any worse. Oh, it's gonna. All the folks who have been the alarmists, who've been told they're such alarmists, turns out they've been right. Again and again and again. I don't know that there's going to be any elections in the fall. I don't know if that's going to happen. And if it happens, if it's going to be on the level. And if it's not on the level, can you tell? Because in a system where you can't believe anything you're being told by virtually anybody, how are you supposed to vet anything? Now, people say, well, it's a time of vibes. Yeah, I'll say. Which is a big problem. Needs to be an ability to know what is and is not factual. And if we've got a culture that says, even if they're presented with facts, go, I don't care. I'll only believe what I want to, which serves me at any particular moment. I'm not sure that's a culture that can do democracy or deserves it. So people have asked, what's your response to all this? I said, keep your head down. If there was a moment for ordinary folks, what's the moment? I think if there was a moment, but it requires some people who are already in entrenched leadership to do something. You're not going to get that from the Chuck Schumers of the world. Those guys aren't going to do anything. So those guys deserve very much how marginalized and how despised they are. I won't be a Democrat because of that. I've never been a Democrat. I'm an independent. I've leaned to the left, but really to the left of most of the Democrats. People are like, Mamdani's scary. Mamdani's fine. Good Lord. Bright young man. We need a lot more folks like himself. He's extremely well spoken. He's very bright. but we need something to push back. And I don't know how that's going to play out. And we should be done predicting. But again, how do you deal with it? Well, where I can do something, I try to. Hell, I'm speaking out here. We're basically dealing in a society that's either has or is about to have a secret police force, where no matter what you say, you're going to get in trouble for anyhow. So nobody's safe. Don't think you're safe. There's no safety. It's very troubling. It's very bad. We are in grave danger. I suggest living like Obi-Wan. I'm living days of Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan got the hell out and went underground. In that sense, I shouldn't even be here. I'm really not doing much Obi-Wan. But, 8 people watch the channel, so. But on some level, you'd like to just go on the record, right? And sit there and go, look, I know what's up. I know how dangerous this is. I know that for a person like myself, I don't belong in this society, which I know. If I could not live here, I would leave. But I have people here. I still have responsibilities here. Because I have values and I have responsibilities, I will stick around, fulfill them. Until such time as I don't have to. Then maybe we'll reevaluate. And I'm a big believer in what I'm gonna paraphrase, but it's the Bernstein quote about the artist's response to violence, and he said in his case, to make music more with greater a dedication. You could find the quote. Bernstein's response to violence, and to be more committed to what you do. What's the one thing, like I make music, the one thing I can do is make more music. That's what I do. That's what I know. Well, that doesn't have a direct, no, it doesn't. But I do believe in the power of distraction. I believe people need to read more, and people need to listen to more long-form music. I think people need to put the phones down increasingly. Galloway, I'm not a huge fan of Galloway. I'm much less a fan of Kira. What a piece of work. She is convinced she's got it all figured out. Just ask her. She'll be glad to tell you. And Galloway drives me crazy with some of his stuff, honestly. I think he gets plenty wrong. But that said, he's not an unintelligent guy. And Galloway is talking about, like, I'm going to unsubscribe from everything. And I think that's the only real power people have, would be to have an economic power. Because there's nothing else that the powers that be care about. They have no values. It's all about the bread. And they'll go wherever the bread takes them. So regular people in that sense could have power if they financially divest themselves of things that are, inherently a problem. There's a ton of it, right? So, we do need to get away from it and try to find alternative forms of news, alternative forms of information. I'm a ground news guy to a degree. I think it's good service. I think the idea is good. If I want news, I go to Reuters or the BBC or a few of those other wire services, and I compare notes because you kind of have to. People did that once upon a time, and it's unfortunate that we've had to go back to that, but we do. News has been compromised by let's have arguments on TV to get ratings. So we amp up things. I think CNN can't be trusted. Obviously Fox can't be trusted. A lot of papers can't be trusted because they're playing a game to get views and readership and etc. So you've really got to work harder in a society where we've got an anesthetized, lobotomized group of people who just aren't bright enough and don't have the tools to begin, to intellectually get themselves out of this muck. And if you look, if you are on any of the platforms, and I am too, I don't spend too much time there, but, you see what people are being exposed to and the sort of dumb stuff people think. I'll give you a dumb example. I used to like the line of life imitates the World Series, that sports was a great microcosm for the way people thought. And you look at the sports talk in the sort of radio or podcasting sense, and it's really not very bright people who just know to say the loudest thing they can. It's just manipulative. There's no honesty to any of that. And they think that's being a good professional. That's what they're supposed to do. They really believe that. I see it whenever I deal with the music industry. And I realize very quickly how it has nothing to do with music. That if any music gets snuck in, it's by accident. Just incredible. We're not even talking that. It's hard for me to talk to that crowd because they're not even interested in the subject matter. It's all become about who is grabbing attention and who did something loud and what clothes people are wearing and dancers or whatever it is. It's nothing to do with anything. I get a little upset with the classical music world and how insular it is, and the jazz music world, which may be even worse. I'm not even sure what they're doing over there anymore. But even as bad as and as out of their minds as those crowds are, because they're off in some other world. As bad as that is, they seem rational and sane compared to the quote unquote music industry. At least they're talking about music. Maybe not be getting it right, but at least they're interested on some level in that. They can't articulate it. They don't articulate it very well, what it is that turns them on or why. So it's tough out there, kids, no matter where you are. Anyway, so those are the things that are crossing my mind. I wish I had some upbeat answer for you, but look, change inevitably happens, so there will be change. Where will that be? How will that be? It's the old story about historians have always said, right, that at the beginning of some great conflict, all the generals are fighting the last war, right? At the beginning of World War I, they were trying to fight what had just happened. I think it would just be it would be a continuation of what they had just perfected 5 or 10 years before. And we're not in any way ready for what it was all. That to me is actually a comfort, because we can't predict how it's going to go. Something we don't expect, something that we can't really see is going to happen. It may be that there is some sort of, that the AI thing isn't going to be the AI thing. I was reading Where the Axe is Buried. It's a great book. You should pick it up. About, where authoritarianism and AI sort of goes. And I think AI is a misnomer of a term, because that's not what it is. They're really LLMs that we're putting the AI name on it. And that could blow up and just turn into BS. That may never blow up as they thought it was going to a couple of years ago. It might not. And there may be a mass movement against it. And that would shake everything up. Last thing, Epstein files. I have to tell you, I'm worried about the fact that people care that much about it. You're not getting the whole story. You're getting a very weird part of the story. But it's a done thing. He's dead. It happened. Everyone's saying, I'm shocked. I'm so shocked. What are you shocked by? Epstein was an open secret forever. Everyone knew what this... Yeah, a lot of people were in that orbit on some level. But people with a lot of influence know other people with a lot of influence. Doesn't make them all criminals. Doesn't all make them what Epstein probably was. Some of them it does, right? So it requires discernment. You can't paint with a wide brush. But you're not getting, there's this thing and we're getting a little peephole that we can barely see through and saying, look, now we know. No, you don't. I think spending time there, I'm worried about the people who care that much about celebrity. And I think it's there to distract us from what's much more important. So we get our act together. Stop worrying about whatever the gossip is. And that we really push back on things. It means, and it does mean, some people that you know, a lot of people probably that you know, you just can't know them anymore. You can know them, but they've got to be put at a distance. No, decent people can't hang out with folks who are the folks who are cool with the Trump putting out the Obama meme. That whole thing. Folks who are cool with that, you can't know them. They can't be a part of your life. The folks who thought Charlie Kirk was a great guy. Holy Jesus. Not a great guy. Christian nationalism. Jesus Christ. So, yeah. Good Lord. Well, that's a reasonable man who must be listened to. Yes. Yeah. He isn't. Trump's been nuts for 40 years. A lot of the people around him are crazy. Or who, maybe they're not crazy, but crazy ideas, they've allowed the crazy ideas, they believe it. So if you're an agent of the crazy ideas, you're basically crazy. In any functional sense. So, yeah, none of that gets a place at the table. Can't. And you've got to enforce it, and you've got to insist upon it. Obviously, Democrats will never do that. Should we? Must we? What must we? I don't know. Had that opportunity. Biden was never going to do that. And Merrick Garland, was the Neville Chamberlain of our time. Got taken to the cleaners. And probably good. That Democratic Party needs to die. They deserve to get taken to the cleaners. Totally full of it. Totally incompetent. Totally didn't get the moment. And when had to speak, couldn't. They had to go for corporate lingo and become an HR department because that's what everyone really likes. So, there's no real good stuff going on here. When something good happens, it will, I think, probably hit us like a ray of sunshine and go, well, okay, where has this been? I don't know when that's going to happen. If it's a year away or 2 years away or 5 years away or 10. We could be in a really dangerous situation for a long time. In which case, go Obi-Wan. I'll talk to you again. I will. Maybe a few moons. But I'll talk to you again. Peace, y'all.